So as an example of an inclusive classroom, I'm going to talk about having a dyslexia-friendly classroom. This is because dyslexia is the most common of the learning disabilities, and they think that 15 to 20% of people have some sort of dyslexia. So we are bound to have a few students who have dyslexia at some level. These are some of the things that people use to make life easier for students with dyslexia. But the good news is there are some pretty easy things that we can do. So the first one is to keep things simple. If we show a slide like this to students with dyslexia, it's very difficult for them to see the writing down here. There's too many things going on in the picture. It's very busy. So you want to keep things simple when we're writing on the board, on handouts, or on PowerPoint slides. And if we're making posters that we're using with the students. We want to keep it as simple as possible, not have too many distracting things. Another is to use easy to read fonts. So there are three fonts. One is Classoom, which I've never heard of. We also have Comic Sans and Arial. So Arial is very common. Comic Sans, a lot of people hate it, but apparently these two fonts are much easier to read for students with dyslexia. Not using black on white. So if we're having a PowerPoint slide, it's easy to change the background so that it's not white. And if we're giving out handouts, then if we can get our hands on paper that's not white, then that's easier for the students with dyslexia to read. So this is often called buff paper in the UK and America. And basically it just means paper that's not white, maybe a bit thicker. So it might be hard to find, or there might be loads of paper around that people didn't want because they wanted white paper. There are other things we can do to make things easier to read. We can use pictures as much as possible. So students with dyslexia have trouble with their working memory. It's hard for them to keep a lot of things in their mind at once. So visuals can help with that. And as with a lot of these things, visuals will also help other learners. Using large text will make it easier for students with dyslexia, and of course any students who are having trouble with their eyes. And leaving a space between the lines makes it easier to read the text. So they suggest 1.5 spacing instead of the normal 1. So this would be like what normal text would look like, and here it's wider spaced and bigger type, and that makes it easier to read. And you'll notice it's good for students with dyslexia, but I think all of us could agree this one is easier to read. We should also try not to justify the text. So here the text is justified on the left and on the right. And this makes it very difficult to read for students with dyslexia and also for other people. Now, also when we're giving anything in writing to the students, we should try and use bullet points or numbers. Now this is true for everyone. When I was a senior teacher at British Council, I would write emails to the other teachers. They're native speakers, they're English teachers, but if I wrote things like this or like this, they wouldn't read it. As much as possible, you have to make it easy. So these are bullet points, and they're useful for a lot of things. And numbers are very useful if we want the students to do something one after another. So first you do this, then you do this, then you do that. So read the questions, watch the video, answer the questions. So these are good ways of organizing the text so that it's easier to read. Now these tips are used at secondary school with native speakers who have dyslexia. But of course we teach English as a second language, so these are normal things that we might use. Explicitly teaching vocabulary. So giving out lists of words when you have a new topic, and you can give it to homework as homework. So students with dyslexia have more time to get ready before they have to read or write about it. Yes. Try different spelling techniques. So games where you put them in groups, and the groups have to spell words, or mnemonics. So the one they suggest is pie. There's a piece of pie in pie. So piece has P-I-E, so it's pie. Piece of pie. It makes it easier to remember how to spell peace. And there are some things that we should do or don't do. So we do encourage students to predict before reading. So we show them a picture and say, what do you think this text is going to be about? Get them to guess what's going to happen in a story, something like that. And we don't make them read aloud. So this can be very stressful if they have dyslexia, or also just if they're not very good at reading, or if they just don't like everybody looking at them or listening to them. So, which of these things do you think you could use in your classroom? And which do you think would be useful for other students, not just for ones with dyslexia? And are there any that you think would be difficult or would make it more difficult for other students? Okay, so most of these I got from 10 Easy Steps to Make Your Classroom Dyslexia Friendly, which is from TES, the Times Educational Supplement. And there's the link, which I'll send to you. Okay, I hope you find this useful.